In the vicinity of the Baha'i Holy Temple, in the city of Haifa, Israel, there is a building with over a century of history called the Eastern Hostel. This building is one of the first Baha'i projects on the slopes of the historic Mount Carmel. And for many years, it was home to thousands of pilgrims who traveled from the east with great difficulty to this land to meet their religious leaders. The story of each of these pilgrims is a sweet and an inspiring tale. Among these thousands, there have been those whose names and families have been immortalized for various reasons. One of these individuals is a man who dedicated his life and the fruits of his labor to the satisfaction of the heart of his master and the comfort of his fellow believers. Thus, his name has been inscribed in the Book of Time. In the mid-19th century, Iran was a backward and poor country, with a weak economy based on seasonal agriculture and livestock herding. Industry was in decline, and the disrepair and insecurity of the roads limited trade to small markets. In those days, the exchange of goods from a small region in the south of such a country to the north of it required a great deal of courage and determination. This is what a young merchant from the province of Fars did. He first traveled from Jahrom, a suburb of Shiraz, to Mashhad, and from there to Ashgabad in Russian Turkestan. His name was Mirza Jafar, and he was born in the mid-1860s.
وقتی میرسه اصفهان اونجا رسم بوده که تنباکو میبردن در خونه ها میدادن، همه قلیون میکشیدن، تنباکو میبردن در خونه ها میدادن. به این میگن که میتونی ببری تنباکو در خونه ها بدی؟ میگه بله. شروع میکنه در خونه شما همینطور تنباکو دادن تا میرسه در خونه امام جمعه اصفهان. وقتی میرسه اونجا زن بچه امام جمعه با اینکه چادری بودن و تو حرم بودن، یعنی تو خانه پنهان بودن به اصطلاح، ولی میرن خبر میدن که یک جوان آراسته اومده اینجا. تا میگن یه جوان آراسته اومده اینجا، دختر امام جمعه و زن امام جمعه از پشت شیشه نگاه میکنن از پدرم خوششون میاد. کارای خود خدا ببینین چه کار میکنه. به بحثی که خوششون میاد از این، یواش این تنباکو میبرده اونجا، بیا تو. بعدش شروع میگن آمیز جعفر، ما از شما خیلی خوشمون اومد، ما میخوایم بریم مشهد، آیا شما میایید با ما؟ میگه بله. اما من میام مشهد، اما دیگه بر نمیگردم با شما. میگن چرا؟ میگه من شنیدم از اونجا به اشقاباد راهی نیست، میخوام برم اشقاباد بلکه اونجا کاسبی بکنم و پولی در بیارم. من از این کار که الان تنباکو بیارم در خونه بدم لذتی نمیدم.
Ashgabad, which is the capital of Turkmenistan today, was a newly built city at that time. It was considered to be the gateway to trade between Asia and the vast country of Russia. The prosperity of the city led many Iranians who were tired of poverty and oppression during the Qajar era to migrate there. Among them were many newly converted Baha'is who had fled their homeland to save their lives from the evil of bigoted clerics and ignorant masses. They had established a relatively modern minority in Ashgabad, a population with a regular administrative hierarchy, a dedicated publication service, and an official temple. The young merchant's business acumen flourished in this new and free environment, He soon added the import of Indian tea to his trade, in addition to buying Iranian tobacco, and the name Mirza Jafar Rahmani became one of the most famous Iranian names in the city. It didn't take long for his business to grow, and he became one of the major importers of tea to Russia, opening branches in several cities. Now, the Mirza Jafar Rahmani Trading Company was known throughout Turkestan. Mirza Jafar's reputation, his adherence to the codes of chivalry, and his pride in the Iranian name and flag led him to become a defender of his oppressed countrymen in a foreign land, including Iranian Baha'is, who were not safe from the persecution of ignorance and bigotry, even in exile in Ashgabat. These acts of support gradually led to trust and mutual bonding between him and the Baha'is. The growing love and connection between Mirza Jafar and the Baha'is of the city led him to be eager to meet Baha'u'llah, the founder of the new faith, in late 1891, and ready to join the ranks of his followers.
هر ایرانی که وارد اشخابات میشد در اون زمان، این بلافاصله کارش درست میکرد که آقا برو یه دکون اونجا بگیر، این کارو بکن، راهنمایی میکرد چیکار بکن. یواش یواش محبوبیتی پیدا کرده بود بین احبایی که از مشهد و اصفهان و تهران و اینا میرفتن به اشخابات برای تجارت. این یه محبوبیت بین اینا پیدا کرده بود. یک روزی یکی از احباب به نام ارباب کاظمزاده، خلاصه ایشون یک مهمانی مفصل میده برای خاطر آمدن آقای وکیل الدوله. در این مهمانی پدرم هم دعوت میکنن. پدرم که میره اونجا، بلافاصله حاج وکیل الدوله میبینه یکایک دارن میان تو اتاق وارد میشن و میگن الله اکبر، الله اکبر، الله اکبر. پدرم از در میرسه، تا میرسه سلام علیکم. جناب افنان میفرمان سلام علیکم چه معنا داره؟ میگن سوست هیچی نگید که ایشون نسبت به احبا خیلی مهربانی میکنن و به پاس این مهربانی که نسبت به احبا میکنن ما ایشون رو خواستیم بیان اینجا که شما رو هم زیارت بکنن جناب افنان. میگه اینایی که دارید میگید زیادیه، من میخوام ببینم ایشون مال کجا هستن که به من گفتن سلام. میگن ایشون میرزا جعفر مال اطراف شیراز یعنی جهرم هستن و آمدن اینجا الحمدلله وضع مادیشون هم خیلی خوب شده فلان اینا. راهنمایی هم به عموم این احبایی که میان اینجا کاسبی میکنن، قنادی باز کنن، نمیدونم تجارت بکنن، کار بکنن فلان اینا، همه راهنمایی رو ایشون میکنن. میگن من میخوام ببینم ایشون چه مذهبی دارن. میگن خودش میگه من مسلمانم. جناب افنانم در همین جمع مهمانی دستور میفرمان که جناب کاظمزاده من میخوام از شما خواهش میکنم فردا چوب و فلک حاضر بکنی و ایشون رو هم بخواید بیان اینجا، در این جمع هم همه تشریف داشته باشن تا پای آمیز جعفر شیرازی رو بذاریم توی فلک و اینقدر بزنیم که بگیم مرد خجالت نمیکشی، به غیرت بر نمیخوره که ظهور امر از شیراز شده، تو همینطور سرت انداختی پایین اومدی سلام 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 چه معنی داره؟ و اگر فردا زدیم کف پای این و تصدیق نکرد اون وقت فکر دیگه ای میکنی براشون. فوراً پدرم دستاشو میاره بالا به صورت تسلیم، میگه من از این تاریخ بهایی شدم.
Traveling from a city like Ashgabat to the eastern shores of the Mediterranean in winter takes about half a year, but Mirza Jafar left his work and life behind, eager to find a sign and meet the heavenly messenger. He set off on his journey with Vakilud Dole Afnan, a well-known Baha'i. During this 2,600-mile journey, the two travelers were welcomed and hosted by the Baha'is of every city. However, After passing through Baku, Tbilisi, and Trabzon, they learned of a bitter news in Istanbul in the middle of the spring of 1892. Baha'u'llah had passed away. The young merchant, disappointed at not being able to meet the Son of Truth, saw the continuation of the journey as fruitless and decided to return. However, a strange attraction that drew him to the promised land overcame his despair. Mirza Jafar arrived in Acre 9 days after the loss of Baha'u'llah and found the proof of his faith in the presence of Abdul Baha, the eldest son of Baha'u'llah and the center of his covenant. In those days, the port of Acre was a military fortress surrounded by high walls. Abdul Baha and the Baha'i community of the city were all prisoners of the Ottoman government, and it was not easy for visitors to come and go. The weather was harsh, water was scarce, and the living conditions were very limited. Mirza Jafar arrived in such circumstances to meet Abdul Baha and was deeply impressed by his boundless energy and spiritual presence. 3 months of living alongside the supreme exemplar of the Baha'i faith led Mirza Jafar to a new understanding of the concept of humanity and the philosophy of creation. Abdul Baha taught him that the ultimate purpose of life is nothing but serving humanity and striving to build a unified world. And he also knew that wealth and prosperity are gifts from God to help achieve these two sacred goals. These teachings became so intertwined with Mirza Ja'far's soul that he never took a step away from his path until his dying breath. Finally, the time came to say goodbye, and Mirza Ja'far returned to Ashgabad with a firm faith to live as a Baha'i. Upon arrival, he joined the active population of Baha'is and devoted all his efforts to strengthening the new religion in the city and the region. The spiritual life of Mirza Ja'far Hadiof began at a difficult time for the Baha'is. The brothers of Abdul Baha broke the strong covenant that their father had established by claiming Abdul Baha to be his successor. They gathered a group of supporters and began to slander and accuse Abdul Baha and the Baha'is who remained faithful to the covenant. Ashgabad, as the major center of Baha'is outside of Iran, was of particular interest to them, and their envoys were constantly searching for ways to sever the spiritual connection between the Baha'is of that region and Abdul Baha. The emergence of division among a population that had always been united was a severe blow to their identity, which the covenant breakers did not care about. However, Abdul Baha suffered from it. His spiritual pain and concerns, which were evident in his writings, alerted Mirza Ja'far that he had no duty more important than preserving unity among the friends and preventing the intrigues of the covenant breakers. He devoted all his efforts to strengthening the spirituality of his fellow Baha'is. His efforts were appreciated by Abdul Baha, who gave him titles in his writings. Mirza Ja'far Hadiof's social activities in support of the Baha'i community made him famous as a Baha'i merchant throughout Turkestan. As a result, he became the target of intrigues and sabotage by some rival merchants. In a tablet, Abdul Baha said to him, "O you who art firm in the covenant, be confident of the divine favor and be in the utmost joy and steadfastness. The moments of divine mercy encompass you, and the favors of the Blessed Beauty are complete. Be in the utmost strength of heart, and never be saddened by the harm caused by the people. Rather act contrary to that. Be certain that you are in the shadow of divine protection. You must act according to the divine teachings. Count the enemy as a friend, and move with forbearance and kindness. You have witnessed the ways of Abdul Baha. Now use that as your guide. You will find all the doors open before you. Within 10 years, Hadiyov's trading company found an extraordinary prosperity, and Mirza Jafar became one of the 5 richest merchants in the region. Throughout all of these circumstances, Mirza Jafar burned with a desire to meet Abdul Baha again. In his regular correspondence with the Center of the Covenant, he constantly asked for permission to visit. However, the critical situation in the Ottoman Empire and the endless sedition of the Covenant breakers constantly postponed the fulfillment of this desire. Not only was he active in the field of propagation and strengthening the new order, but he also did not hesitate to donate money to strengthen the administrative projects. For example, in a letter, he asked permission to place his now extinct house at the disposal of the spiritual assembly of the city. And in 1902, when the Baha'i community of Ashgabad took the first steps to establish the first Mashriq al-Azkar in the world, he took generous and wise steps in this direction. Finally, in 1907, after 15 years, his tired soul was revived by these glad tidings. Abdul Baha had called upon him to visit. On this journey, God granted him the opportunity to serve in a way that made his name famous for generations.
پدرم ببینه یک روزی هیکل مبارک خیلی ناراحتن، روی مندل نشسته بودن و خیلی ناراحت. وقتی پدرم میبینن هیکل مبارک خیلی ناراحتن، میره جلو عرض میکنه قربان خاکپای مبارکت گردم، چرا شما ناراحتی؟ هیکل مبارک میفرمان من از دست این ناقضین خیلی ناراحتم، برای اینکه احبا پیاده سواره هر جوری هست خودشونو برای زیارت مرقد مبارک جمال قدم میرسونن به اینجا روضه مبارکه، ولی متاسفانه وقتی میان اینجا جا ندارن، میرن تو قهوه خانه ها. قهوه خانه ها هم 3 تا قهوه خانه هست اینجا، ناقضین دارن اینا رو اداره میکنن. خیلی من ناراحتم. پدرم میگه اجازه میفرمایید من یه مسافرخانه بسازم که شما راحت باشید؟ هیکل مبارک میفرمان نه دیگه وقتی هیکل مبارک فرمان نه دیگه نمیتونه حرف بزنه. صحبت های دیگه پیش میاد و صحبت میکنن و اینا تمام میشه. باز 1 هفته بعد تقریبا ببینه هیکل مبارک تشریف آوردن، خیلی هم ناراحت و تو محبته خودشون جالب شدن روی مندل، صندلی که میدونید میچرخه میگن مندل، اون روی مندل نشسته بودن. باز میبینه پدرم که حضرت عبدالبها ناراحتم، میره جلو میگه قربان خاکپای مبارکت گردم، چرا ناراحتید شما؟ میتونم رفع ناراحتی شما رو بکنم؟ میفرمان اون دفعه هم بهت گفتم این ناقضین اینجا اینقدر مخالفت میکنن با ما که حتی زائرین که این همه راه رو میان اینجا اینا مجبورن برن توی قهوه خانه های اینا زندگی بکنن و هر 3 این قهوه خانه ها ناقص توش هست که اینا رو زخمی میکنن و برمیگردن به مملکت خودشون. این میگه من اون وقت خواهش کردم از حضورتون که اجازه بفرمایید یک مسافرخانه بسازم، حالا بسازم؟ میفرمان بله، اما یک موسی نقیوفی بود که این موسی نقیوف از ما پول خواست، ثروت خواست، ما هم به او دادیم. این موسی نقیوف وقتی ثروتمند شد مرتب با هم در تماس بودیم، اما از ثروتش ما هیچ استفاده نکردیم. ولی میخوام به شما بگم شما پیغام عبدالبها رو برای اون ببرید.
At the same time as Mirza Ja'far's visit, a group of exiled Iranians had gathered in Istanbul. They were trying to open the eyes of their compatriots to the evils of the rule of the despotic rulers. The Ottoman government, which was itself under pressure from young reformers, saw the activities of the Iranian revolutionaries as a threat to the peace of the empire and put them under pressure. The consequences of this pressure reached Palestine as well, and Abdul-Baha was also troubled as the leader of a group of exiles. The condition that Abdul-Baha placed on Mirza Jafar Hadiof's request, in fact, postponed its realization until the following year, and until the victory of the Young Turks uprising in 1908. Mirza Jafar was eager to fulfill his master's wish, so he left his presence and went to meet Musa Khan Naqiyov in Baku. Naqiyov was a wealthy oil magnate, and it was not easy to meet with him. Mirza Jafar finally met him after 3 days of waiting and delivered the master's message to him. But Naqiyov did not look happy and made the excuse that Mirza Jafar should first withdraw his cash from Ishqabad and then come back to him on his way to Haifa to receive the equivalent amount in a draft. Mirza Jafar, who had always wanted to be the only one involved in this honor, was happy with his answer and left Baku. He returned to Ishqabad with a heart full of hope, not knowing what had happened to his business during his absence. In his homeland, Mirza Jafar learned that in his absence, tea production in Russia had become scarce, and all the tea stocks of the merchants of Ishqabad had been sold, except for his warehouses, where a large shipment of tea from India had been stored, thanks to the vigilance of his agents. Dozens of merchants and brokers sat in his shop every day until nightfall, waiting for his return. And as soon as Mirza arrived, they bought the contents of his warehouse for cash at 10 times the price. And Mirza once again knew for sure that wealth is a trust that is placed in the hands of a man by the will of heaven so that he may spend it at his discretion in the way of God's pleasure. On his way back to Haifa, Mirza Jafar again went to meet Mirza Musa Naqiyov as planned. This time, Musa used the regional revolutions and political developments in Russia and the Caucasus as an excuse, and asked Mirza to return to the Holy Land and to start the work himself, and if he encountered financial problems, he would inform him to remit money. Mirza Jafar was pleased with these excuses, and he said goodbye to Musa Khan without saying a word, and from the passage of the troubled provinces, he reached the intended land and presented the explanation of what had happened.
تا پدرم میره وارد حیفا میشه به خسرو میگن که بگو جعفر اومده رحمانی. تا میاد میره میگه اسدالله از این راه پلا تشریف میارن پایین و میفرمان جناب آقا میرزا جعفر بسیار خوش آمدید، رفتید پیغام منو به موسی نقیوف دادید، عرض میکنه قربان رفتنه اینجور شد رفتم پیغام دادم، برگشتنم اینجور شد پیغام دادم. حضرت عبدالبها خیلی ناراحت میشن، خیلی، و میفرمان اون کسی که به موسی نقیوف پول داد همین استاعه، این داشته باشید، همین استاعه از اون گرفت.
Mirza Jafar quickly found a suitable piece of land for a pilgrim house in the vicinity of Haifa and presented it to his master. However, Abdul-Baha had an eternal perspective and advised Mirza to also consider the future of the Baha'i world and to find a large piece of land facing north on the outskirts of Mount Carmel. Following the purchase of the land, preparations for the construction began. Abdul-Baha personally participated in the design of the building plan and determined how the sections of the floors would be divided. Mirza Jafar, who was forced to return to his homeland and attend to his work and life affairs, left for Ishqabad with the completion of the drawing and the preparation of materials. He entrusted the supervision of the progress of the construction to Mirza Mohsen, Abdul-Baha's eldest son-in-law. The revolutions in Iran and the Ottoman Empire had now spread to the southern provinces of Russia, and they had turned Turkestan and the Caucasus upside down. The situation was chaotic, and the movement of money and travelers was prohibited. Despite this, Mirza had no other thought than to raise funds and complete his long-cherished dream. Therefore, when he learned of the frequent interruptions in the progress of the work,
شش ماه طول میکشه ساختمان تمام بشه. بعد از این 6 ماه یک مهمانی مفصل در حضور حضرت عبدالبها به پاس تشریف آوردن حضرت عبدالبها به مسافرخانه برای افتتاح مسافرخانه، حضرت عبدالبها که تشریف میارن یک مرتبه حاج میرزا ولی قلمدان و کاغذ حاضر کرده بوده که حضرت عبدالبها تشریف میارن و حضرت عبدالبها بگه که قربان یه شرحی بنویسید که روی سنگی حک بکنیم و این سنگ حک شده را رو سردر مسافرخانه بذاریم که بانی کیه؟ حضرت عبدالبها میفرمایند چی بنویسم برای امیرزا جعفر؟ عرض کنم هر چی میل مبارکه. میفرمان چی بنویسم مگر این که بنویسم میرزا جعفر شیرازی رحمانی دیوانه دیوانه دیوانه، چیز دیگه ندارم بنویسم، برای اینکه امروز روزیه که هر کسی مخارج زندگی خودش میکنه، پولاش خرج زندگی و تفرعات و تفنن خودش میکنه، ولی ایشون برای دلخوشی من اومدن اینجا این مسافرخانه رو و میگیرن مینویسن که این بنیان مهمانخانه روحانی است و بانی میرزا جعفر شیرازی رحمانی 1328.
the Pilgrim House was inaugurated in 1910, and the name of the man who had spent his wealth for the satisfaction of his master and the comfort of his servants was immortalized in the world of the seen and the unseen. Shortly thereafter, Abdul-Baha praised his loyal friend. From the day of your departure until now, I have not had a moment's respite from thinking of you, and I have always asked for help and guidance from the court of the one God. Therefore, be assured that God is pleased with you, and I am pleased with you, and all the friends are pleased with you. This great blessing is the cause of joy in the heart of the pure, so you should be full of ecstasy and joy, that you are the object of my attention and acceptable in the court of the Lord of forgiveness. Mirza Jafar visited Haifa for the 4th time in 1912 and completed the furnishings and decorations of the Pilgrim House. It was fate that on his return from this trip, he married Atiya Khanum, the granddaughter of Meshkin Qalam. The bride had made a condition for this auspicious marriage, which took place during the days of Rezvan 1913, that she would like to visit the center of the covenant. Therefore, on the eve of the wedding, Mirza took her to the telegraph office to seek permission from Abdul-Baha. Since Abdul-Baha was in America at the time, the greatest holy leaf replied to the telegram instead and congratulated him on their marriage as follows. It is the festival of Rezvan, and the light of oneness is shining and radiant from the horizon of the mercy of the divine. May the wedding of that leaf be blessed and auspicious, and unlike the days past, may you be happy and joyful, and may you live together in perfect unity, agreement, and oneness. In truth, your known companion is the servant of the cause of God, and is steadfast in the covenant. Convey our infinite greetings to her. God willing, the light of the covenant will soon return upon the horizon of Haifa, and I will share your request with him. Mirza Jafar Rahmani was loved deeply by Abdul-Baha because of his strong faith and lasting services in Haifa and Ashgabat. And until the time of his ascension, numerous tablets were revealed to Mirza Jafar and his associates. Shauqi Effendi, the guardian of the cause of God, corresponded with this distinguished servant from his youth, and Mirza Jafar remained steadfast until his last breath. Three years after the last pilgrimage, and at the end of World War I, the Russian Revolution of 1917 triumphed and brought about major changes in the lives of the people living in all parts of the country. In its first steps, the government confiscated the property of the wealthy and closed all religious organizations and temples. Iranian merchants residing in Ashgabat quickly evacuated their property from Turkestan and fled to Iran. However, Mirza Jafar, who had long been a member of the spiritual assembly of Ashgabat, did not consider leaving his fellow Baha'is on condition of loyalty. He accepted all the risks and remained by their side. With the division of Russian Turkestan into several new republics, the branches of his trading company in the cities of Samarkand and Khoqand were lost. In 1926, a large part of his assets in Ashgabat were also confiscated. However, he remained steadfast and continued to serve. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, praised the steadfast spirit in a letter dated May 2, 1926. Praise be to God, you have attained to a service at the holy threshold that will endure forever. And you have built a house in the Friend's path that, like the sun of the universe, its light will shine for centuries and ages. And better than this is that you have remained pure as refined gold in the fire of trial and the crucible of calamity, and you have been patient and grateful. This is the highest of stations. In 1928, the socialist government imprisoned Mirza and other members of the spiritual assembly for 1 year on the charges of religious activity. After their release, the government confiscated the remaining assets. Finally, Mirza and his family were expelled from Turkmenistan in winter of 1930. They first went to Mashhad and then to Esfahan. Despite their financial difficulties, they always remained steadfast in the path of God. Mirza Jafar returned to his hometown of Jahrom after half a century, accompanied by his eldest son, Agha Hadi. He settled in his father's house. In December of that year, after 40 years of selfless service to his dear friends and the beloved faith, he left the mortal world at the age of 85 in the utmost faith and steadfastness in the covenant. He returned to the dust from which he was created. Shoghi Effendi, in his message of condolences dated December 15, 1931, praised Mirza Jafar Rahmani Shirazi as follows: that great person was like a solid mountain, firm and steadfast in the cause. He was always steadfast and persistent in service and sacrifice throughout his life. He was always happy, cheerful, and smiling, even in times of hardship, difficulty, and misfortune. Like a burning candle, he had no other desire than the pleasure of God, and he did not seek anything other than success in service. Of course, such a free spirit and happy soul is not lost or hidden, but present, existing,